Welcome back, everyone, to Showtime College Football Episode 9. I am joined today with my older brother, Tanner. We are here to discuss some Big 12 news, and let's get right into it. Breaking news from this week, Colorado has announced that they are joining the Big 12 in 2024. Boom! Biggest news we've had all offseason. Also, College Game Day has announced they're going to Charlotte, North Carolina for a matchup between North Carolina and South Carolina. We talked a lot about this matchup in one of our previous episodes, how it's a very underrated game. Now, they definitely got that College Game Day because the other two big games are on random days. They're on Sunday and Thursday. But let's introduce my older brother, Tanner. Tanner, where are you from? Who's your favorite team? And get into it.
So, homegrown here in Utah. Grew up a big BYU fan. Always have been. Always will be my favorite team. But as I've studied, been following college football for a long time. I have a few other favorite teams, and they've kind of shifted and stuff. But right now, I'm really high on Oklahoma State. Is in addition to that to BYU.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Oklahoma State. Yeah.
Okay. Always consistent, always good.
Yeah, always good. One of those high player in the Directors Cup.
RBU.
Yeah. You got some greats coming out of there. I used to be a Texas and a Notre Dame fan, but over the last...
Really?
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah.
That's pretty uncommon. A lot of people hate those two teams.
I know. I hate them now.
Yeah.
Well, I don't hate them, but just interacting with a lot of their fans and
on the Twitter.
It
all goes down on Twitter, guys.
It all goes down on Twitter. You form a lot of opinions, and honestly, in today's age, your perception on Twitter is everything, and that actually has a really big impact on what's going on with conference alignment right now.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of tempers flaring in terms of how the conference alignment has gone, especially with Colorado, that bomb dropping. A lot of Pac-12 people were fairly confident that nothing was going to break the 10 that were still remaining. And
are we referring to the same person?
Maybe. There's a few of them.
There's three that I can think of.
There's plenty nice Pac-12 fans. Obviously, Chase, who's normally on the show, is a Oregon Ducks fan, and he is a very humble, good Pac-12 fan. I have a lot of respect for him.
Yeah, and just to, the preface, with college realignment, the Pac-12 in this deep water it's honestly a really sad thing, honestly, for the sport as a whole. The Pac-8, Pac-10, Pac-12 now is a historic conference, and you have a lot of great college football tradition that originated on the West Coast, and so it is honestly a little sad to see that the direction that the conference is going.
Yeah, exactly, and we take the stance at Showtime College Football. We're positive fans. We put our own biases in there just to make it a little fun, but we try and stay for the love of the sport as our focus. And so we obviously don't want to see good quality programs, even like Oregon State, Stanford, maybe Washington State. We don't want to see those guys drop to maybe a group of 5 or even drop off completely. And so I'm in the boat, at least, that I want to see all these programs find a way to stay relevant, because there's a lot of them that I love watching, especially like Washington State, Oregon State, the Arizona
Oregon State
schools.
was great last year.
Oregon State's amazing. I actually love Oregon State.
They're a dark horse to win the Pac-12 next year.
Yeah, they're in that top 5 or 6 now.
I don't think. I mean, maybe not to win it, but to definitely compete. And
they'll compete. Yeah.
With the Clemson transfer.
Yeah.
Can't remember his name.
DJ Uiagalelei.
Yeah,
I'm getting better, guys. It's getting closer.
I know. I always butcher his name, but I mean, he could pull kind of what Jalen Hurts did. Transferring to Oklahoma, transferring from a big school to obviously to another Power 5 school, and seeing kind of a rebirth of that career, maybe make a push for an NFL draft position.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't really have any place to go but up. I mean, he left Clemson on pretty bad terms, and Oregon State has never expected much, especially out of quarterbacks. So I think it's going to be a pretty... obviously, it's a big deal. He's a transfer QB. There's some pressure, but I think it's a very low-pressure thing. Like, he does not have to perform very well to be above average, especially for Oregon State. So I'm excited for them this season. So one question I wanted to ask you further in your introduction is, what college football games will you be attending this year, and which ones are you most excited to watch that they can be the same or vice versa?
Yeah, I did want to travel to some more games this fall, but I'll probably be mainly staying here at home. Going to I'm a season ticket holder at BYU. Two games that really stand out to me are is the BYU Cincinnati home game. That's the Big 12 home opener for BYU. That's going to be a really high octane game. Cincinnati's coming off kind of a rebound year.
Yeah,
and
they've with their new changes. I love Cincinnati fans, especially because Bearcat Matt on Twitter.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
a cool guy.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I
Yep.
I actually really like Cincinnati. Like Travis Kelce, the Kelce brothers coming out of Cincinnati. I have a lot of respect for that program. Made the playoff. One of only 2 Group of 5 teams to make the playoff. I have a lot of respect for Cincinnati, but I don't think they're gonna. I'm in the boat where I don't think they're gonna be very good this year.
No,
I don't see them
definitely.
winning too many games in the Big 12.
Definitely coming into the Big 12 at a lower point in their
At a lower,
programs.
yeah. That's a good way to
but-
say it. At a
but-
lower point.
But they have the ability to really,
Well, they have money in a football program.
Yeah.
They have support, so they'll make it.
and it's a great fan base.
Yeah.
And so you can see them pushing that, and I think in the next few years they're going to be pretty competitive here
Oh, yeah.
in the Big 12. I
see
don't
that.
see them making too much noise this year. But so I'm really excited for that matchup with BYU. The two of the new Big 12 players,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be the home opener. I think that it's a night game.
Yeah, I'm excited for
Yeah,
that game.
and if you've ever been to LaVell Edwards Stadium at BYU at a night game, it is ridiculous.
Well, you know that we still have the thing. It might have been broken last year. We lost a few home games last year. We don't want to talk about it too much,
No,
but
no.
BYU statistically in maybe the Kalani Sitake era, BYU plays like we're almost undefeated at night at home.
Yeah.
Like we don't lose it. But the day games, like Arkansas last year, we lost.
Oh yeah.
That was a really rough game. But the games we lose at home are always during the day. And
Yeah.
so naturally we love night games. I don't know why. Is it because we're more used to the cold? I don't know.
I think there's just a special energy,
And
LaVell-
Baylor last year was crazy.
Oh, that was one of the craziest
That's
games.
insane.
But yeah, you look at that, and it's kind of one of those odd things. You have, with the 2021 season, we saw a lot of those night games with Utah and Arizona State. Those were two
those are
of the
huge games, yeah.
biggest games of the year out west, and those were some of the most energized fans you'll see. And then
it
Baylor
was
last
crazy.
year matched it again.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely something in the air at night at LaVell Edwards Stadium. It's
exciting.
crazy. Yeah, and actually on a completely different note, I'm actually planning on trying to attend the Kansas City Chiefs game out in Arrowhead in December this year. Yeah,
That's gonna be cold.
I think it's a Christmas Eve game.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, and
Very
we're
nice.
gonna try to make it.
That'd be cool.
I think they're playing the Raiders that day. I can't remember, but yeah, we're gonna try to get tickets for that one. That's gonna be pretty fun.
That's awesome. And I think for me, most excited game to attend this year is definitely BYU Oklahoma. That game's gonna be just crazy. I'm a BYU student, so I'll be at all the BYU games. But I'm also going to be traveling to Austin, Texas, to watch BYU at Texas.
Oh, that's a game that's on my bucket list because I think that's one of the most intriguing matchups this year in the Big 12 because the last decade, in that Texas BYU series that we had during independence, it was, we lost that first one when we were playing
In Austin.
And then they came in 2013. And we had that rain delay and
Yeah, I remember that.
crushed them. It was Taysom Hill all over the place. And then we had,
crushed them.
I think it was the next year. I wasn't able to watch it.
That was the hurdle.
That was the hurdle.
Yeah.
Weren't there 2 hurdles?
I can't remember.
I thought there was maybe.
Taysom Hill hurdle.
But it was
You should
Taysom
look
Hill.
up the highlight. It was crazy.
Taysom Hill and then Taysom Hill strikes again. That series, watching those highlights is insane. Like Taysom Hill highlight reel all over the place.
Yeah, and so I'm getting those seats at Texas for $55.
What?
$55. Yes.
Really?
And that is because I'm using my new code for SeatGeek.
Oh,
SeatGeek for Showtime CFB. Use the code. SeatGeek has decided to sponsor with us. And I wanted to find, when I was doing this research on how to find people to help out the podcast with, brands and stuff, I wanted to find something that the following would actually appreciate. And so now with SeatGeek, you get $20 off your purchase using the code Showtime CFB. And I would recommend making several accounts, so you can use it several times for all your tickets. But so I got those BYU Texas tickets for really cheap, and I'm looking at games right now. I'm looking at LSU Auburn, $69. With my code, it would be $49. LSU Auburn, some SEC ball in the fall would be amazing. So shout out to SeatGeek for giving us that sponsor and getting you guys some cheaper tickets. So start looking at those tickets. They're always cheaper than I think. Obviously, even if you don't even get the best tickets, but we're getting lower bowl tickets at Texas. They're high lower bowl for under $70. So
that's awesome. I actually have used SeatGeek. That's actually my ticket vendor of choice.
Really?
Yeah, and I've actually used them for years, and I'm not just saying that because they're sponsoring, but honestly, I go to them most of the time because they have typically the lowest ticket.
Are their fees very bad?
I think they're pretty
I don't even
standard.
know. Guys, I don't think SeatGeek is watching this, so it doesn't really matter what we say about them. I don't know.
No, honestly, SeatGeek's pretty good. I think the fees are pretty.
The same as
same as like Ticketmasters and Fitbit Seats.
Okay.
There are some services out there that have no fees,
and they put it into the ticket.
But they put it into the ticket, and so it's like this
almost the same.
It's the same, but yeah, you're gonna get a good deal with SeatGeek.
But yeah,
for sure.
So check that out. Go start scrolling games. It's gonna be hard to say no once you start seeing some of those games. So I cannot be more excited to go to Austin. I don't know if we're gonna win that game. We'll see because Texas has a lot of hype this year. BYU, obviously, I'm gonna cheer for BYU. I'm gonna go crazy, but yeah, I won't be mad if we lose. I'm excited just to go watch some college football. So. But let's dive into the Big 12 talk. So Colorado announced just yesterday that they are planning on joining the Big 12 in 2024. And then just today, they finalized, or I think it was last night, they finalized the voting.
Technically it was last night. Last night was the meeting of the
Big 12
university,
presidents?
University presidents of Big 12, and it was a unanimous vote, which actually you don't see very often. So it's actually pretty cool that it was a unanimous vote across the board to let Colorado into the Big 12.
So it's looking like it's pretty official at this point. Obviously, there can be hiccups. Like it can happen where there's a deal that they don't know about, or there's certain sports that wouldn't work with, TV deals, stuff like that. So obviously, it's never 100% until it actually happens. Even with BYU, we were waiting until the actual day that it happened. I refused to believe it until the day that we joined on July 1st. I was like, I am not gonna let myself get carried away, but. I mean, as of right now, it looks like 95% Colorado is moving to the Big 12. So what were your first thoughts? Were you surprised? Were you not surprised?
Well, so, Colorado has a long history with a lot of those teams, being part of the original Big 8 with a lot of those Midwest teams. So there's that history there. And so it was, when they moved into the Pac-12, 10 or so years ago, it was kind of a tough transition for the Buffaloes.
A weird move.
It was a weird move, and obviously we know that they did struggle in the Pac-12. I think that transition was just tricky for them. Colorado's got a really great history of college football, and they've definitely had some down years, and obviously you see with signing with Coach Prime coming on board. That's a really big boost. I think one of the most impressive things I saw at Colorado is just their spring game.
Sold out.
They filled their stadium for their spring game.
It's crazy.
You don't
Not
see
even.
that.
I don't think Bama even does that.
No.
I don't think hardly any. I mean, I think I saw maybe one or two that filled up their stadium. Maybe Tennessee did this year.
It's
Ohio
rare.
State did. It was Ohio State.
Ohio State.
So like Colorado, Ohio State, and maybe one other team filled up their stadium for spring ball.
Yeah, and so we knew. So last year when we found out that USC and UCLA were leaving, Colorado was one of the first names said that would vault to the Big 12. And so this last, over the course of this last year, talking about realignment, it was always kind of known that Colorado was going to be either first or second from the Pac-12. If the Pac-12 were going to have any defectors, that they were going to be the first or the second to go, 100%. And so, and with all of the media deal issues that the Pac-12 is having, over the last several months, we've been hearing over and over again that Colorado is going to be bailing. I think the part that surprised me the most is just how quickly it happened yesterday. So I logged on to Twitter in the morning, and I saw that these discussions were progressing towards that.
Yeah.
And it seemed like all of a sudden they had that board of directors meeting that morning with University of Colorado, and it was like announced like that it was nearly a done deal, like by like noon.
Yeah, it was. I think it was 2 p.m. Mountain Time when it got released.
Yeah,
around 2 p.m.
It was right in the middle of the day, and so that's when it happened really quickly, and we've kind of seen a lot of information come out since yesterday about that move into the Big 12 from the Pac-12.
And this is really interesting because when you have a massive announcement like that, it's generally going to push others to act. I don't know which way it's going to push some schools, but it's definitely going to, if you're on a board of directors for Arizona or Arizona State, I would not be surprised if they're, having meetings now, starting to get a little, whoa, like, so what are we doing?
Yeah.
So I would not be surprised if this is not the first announcement, even in the next week or two. I'd say before the season starts, there's going to be some big announcements just like this one. So.
Even rumor has it that even by tomorrow Friday, there might be some big stuff dropping.
Okay. This podcast will be on Monday, so we won't even know.
We won't even know.
Or we will know, but the people listening to this, check your Twitter because we're filming this on Thursday.
Yeah, so we could definitely see something happen as early as tomorrow. We have information that Oregon set up an urgent board of directors meeting earlier this
That
morning.
One's interesting because Oregon was not one that I really suspected for very long. It was Oregon and Washington to the Big Ten. That's been the whole thing, is Oregon, Washington to the Big Ten, and the Four Corner schools to the Big 12.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been 85% of people believe that to be true.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. I've seen also the same, I might have seen the same post on Twitter that was like, yeah, low-key, I could see it being Oregon next. And I was like, what? So
yeah, so obviously, Washington and Oregon are two really big brands left in the Big 12. You could argue that they're
nearly usually the two biggest left.
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily consider them blue bloods, but they're just that right underneath.
Yeah.
And so they're some of the most attractive schools out there, and they're good across
especially
all
Oregon for money wise. Oregon viewership is crazy.
Yeah, and the stuff with Phil Knight and Nike, that's a really big
Oregon's big brand.
Yeah, it's a big brand. And so it was definitely surprising, but we've seen over the last few months, and it's really hard to know what to believe with conference realignment because you have multiple sources on kind of both sides, from different parts of the country arguing different things and saying, oh, my source told me this, my source told me that. So over the last few months, we've been seeing a lot of rumors saying that the Big Ten is going to take a step back from expansion. After adding two big brands like UCLA and USC, they're going to take a step back, and they have a new commissioner possibly coming in. And so there's a lot of volatility in some of those positions in the Big Ten, and so they've kind of set their sights on just kind of stability right now. Let's get USC and UCLA integrated in, and have kind of told Washington and Oregon, not now.
Yeah, that's what I've also gotten as the rumors, is that Big Ten is kind of like, we're gonna chill out for right now. Like don't count us on doing anything. So, yeah.
But here's the thing: is the Pac-12 still does not have a media deal, and
No.
so, like, if I'm Washington, Oregon, you're two of the biggest brands in football. They're both supposed to be great this next year and over the next few years. Honestly,
some of the greatest football they've ever played should be the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and if you're going into either a crappy media deal with the Pac-12 or having the Pac-12 dissolved, they're not in that position where they're going to be complacent and stay back. They want to make sure that they're getting every bang for their buck and have a good position money-wise and have enough viewership to swing AP voters to put them higher in the polls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And it's so crazy what's even happening right now. I could not fathom this being a discussion, even 5 years ago, saying Washington and Oregon are without a conference trying to find one. It's just crazy. And so I am so excited to see what happens with all of this. I'm open to pretty much anything. I'm excited for any news. I really hope that all these teams find a home, because it'd be really sad to see, like we said before, teams fall off the map just because of the situation when they don't really deserve to just fall off the map, especially teams that are growing like Oregon State and, teams that are trying to grow their brand, Washington State. And Oregon and Washington are keynote teams that are, like you said, they're top tier teams that deserve to be they're 100% Power 5. I mean, if you invited Oregon and Washington to the Big 12, it would be crazy. So going forward with all of this news, other than Oregon, like we just talked about, what are some other teams that are in the mill? Because obviously we've heard four corner schools are the ones, and that is Colorado, Utah, Arizona, Arizona State. Those are the ones for the last 6 months that have been in the hot seat. One of them, Colorado, just went to the Big 12. So is it those three teams, or one of those three teams are the most likely other than Oregon? Or how would you could rank them too if you'd like?
Yeah, so I think the most likely is Arizona. Arizona has been in kind of a similar idea space as Colorado. They have been looking at pursuing other options, and especially with Arizona. Arizona, their football program the last few years has not been good.
It's kind of stunk.
They're stunk. They're still a good brand.
They can still recruit. They still got a big brand, yeah.
But I think one of the biggest things that's pushing Arizona is obviously the basketball.
Oh yeah.
And the Big 12 is, beyond any other conference in terms of basketball rate. Like
if they got Arizona, because Colorado's actually one of the main basketball powerhouses in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
So if Arizona joined, it'd be bona fide the greatest basketball conference ever. If Arizona joined on top of that.
I honestly think the Big 12, as it stands, is already the best.
Oh, it's already easily the best right now.
I think best ever.
You think best ever?
I think best. I guess you could.
It's hard to.
ACC a few years ago.
ACC of 2010s was pretty crazy. It was pretty deep. But yeah, Big 12 right now is easily the SEC of basketball. But I think if you got Arizona and Colorado, it would be not even close to any conference ever.
Yeah.
In basketball.
100%.
Maybe in any sport, because it's so dominant already.
Absolutely. And so I think that's a really big driving force for Arizona. And then culturally, Arizona does fit in better with some of those Midwest schools. And so you're going to see, I think we're going to see Arizona is going to be the next thing to follow. I
always thought Arizona State was actually the one that was more involved.
Yeah. I have not seen a lot of info about Arizona State coming out. I honestly, at least in my rankings, I have them looking in. They're on the outside looking in.
Really? That's interesting. Yeah, I always pegged them as more of like I thought they were the second behind Colorado this whole time. Especially because they've been more likely to schedule Big 12 opponents. They're playing Oklahoma State at home this year. I think they played at Oklahoma State last year. Maybe I'm wrong, but they just seemed more Big 12 to me. But it sounds like Arizona's the one actually pushing things.
It's Arizona, and I think you have... I think a lot of it comes down to the board of directors. In Arizona is really pushing to kind of distance themselves from the Pac-12. And I wouldn't be surprised if Arizona State hopped on board, but I don't put them very high on that list.
So yeah, with this news about Colorado moving, we know that in college football, well, in general college sports, teams generally move conferences in pairs because you need even amounts of teams in conferences to make tournaments work, to make scheduling make more easy. And so with all this Colorado stuff coming out, there's got to be at least one more.
Yeah,
absolutely. One or three more.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So according to a few sources, the Big 12 does not want to exceed 16 teams. With the current media
What does that mean, 16 in the future or 16 right now?
16 in the future.
Okay.
Because Oklahoma and Texas, they're going to be out by the time that
Colorado would join.
Colorado would join. So that's kind of because technically they're at 14 now, with Texas and Oklahoma, but they're not part of the future, so they're kind of, those numbers don't really count.
So now,
because they're not part of the new media deal.
Yeah. Okay. So now that means right now we're at 13 teams. As of 2024, next season, there are 13 teams in the Big 12.
Yes.
And with Colorado being number 13.
Yeah, with Colorado joining, that makes 13. So most sources state that the Big 12 is wanting to either move one more school or two. Or sorry, one or three schools.
Yeah, because they need to come in pairs.
Yeah, but I don't see them exceeding that 16. That would just be bonkers. And
I think the SEC actually has 16 now with Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I believe they have 16,
so.
Which is like huge. And they're not doing divisions, so that's just like a massive conference.
Yeah.
It's huge. They're only playing 8 of the 16. Like usually it's like in most conference play, you play most of the conference. Like the Pac-12 this year did not have divisions, which was awesome. Even though Utah got the blessing of that, I still loved having a 5-way tie for the Pac-12. It was awesome. And so the SEC is going divisionless, same as Big Ten, and those are going to be some big conferences now with no division. So I believe they're only playing 8. As the SEC is only playing 8 conference games.
Yeah, that was actually a big surprise because the Big 12 and I know the Big 12 is playing 9.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember. I think Big 10's playing 9.
The Big Ten already plays 9.
They already play 9.
I know that.
Okay. Yeah, and so that's kind of a big surprise. And so I think we really are going to see either 1 or 3 teams join and either create 14 or a 16 team conference.
Okay. And so for our next question I wanted to ask you is, what are the pros, and we've kind of already discussed some of the pros. I think most of us are aware with the pros, but what are the pros and cons of Colorado leaving for Colorado, also for conferences for college football? What are pros and cons of everything that's happening right now?
So, I mean, pros and cons, it's difficult, because you have multiple parties involved. I think it's a great move for Colorado. With that media deal, not knowing, and most likely going to be like 20 to 30% lower than what the Big 12 is.
Oh yeah.
That's an easy move. You're gonna increase
money wise, easy.
Money wise, it's easy, and that's a good media deal. Colorado's gonna get a lot of publicity out on the East Coast.
Well, now they have the actual, and now Colorado actually has like the tangible evidence that they are a big school because of Deion Sanders. They actually have people that want to watch Colorado football for the first time since 2003. And so they will benefit so much from this because their value will be seen. Reevaluating now with all the stuff that's happened, getting these 5-star recruits, Deion Sanders, the fan base is exploding with hype right now. So they're going to get so much out of a reevaluation.
Absolutely.
If it was a year ago today, it would be like, oh, cool. Colorado's coming. Well, maybe Deion Sanders. Was that a year ago?
Deion Sanders was at the end of the last season. Yeah, because he was...
Oh, it was end of last season. Okay, so yeah, it was not a year ago. So if you said Colorado was joining a year ago, I'd be like, oh, cool.
Yeah, I wouldn't really
nice.
think too much of it.
Yeah.
But, one of the cool things when you talk about with that Big 12 media deal is that the current media deal states that any Power 5 transfer schools that come in will hit that same, was it the $31.5 million?
I know that BYU got 19.
Yeah, well, and it'll ramp up because it
Was it escalate?
It escalates, yeah. So BYU will get that full. I don't remember exactly when. I think it's after 2 years.
Oh, okay.
But the cool thing is that the media deal allows that flexibility, and it can go up to the 16 teams, and so you have that immediate match. You have that immediate knowledge that Colorado's going to be making money in 2024.
Because the schedules, their contracts already been laid out for them. And so I'm really excited for all these Group of 5 teams because Houston, UCF, Cincinnati, BYU are all getting massive increases in money for their programs. Because, I mean, I know for BYU, we were making $6 million a year on our TV deal, and we were independent, and we made a pretty good living for ourselves because we'd play big games, we'd play whoever wanted to play us. BYU has a very large fan base, and we were making $6 million a year, and now we just almost tripled to $19 million a year.
More than that, yeah.
And so for a lot of these programs, I'm sure I don't think the American Conference was even $6 million. I wonder if it was even less.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers on those other like Mountain West and Americans.
Yeah,
so I don't know
but still, I mean, for these teams going in, it's such a massive increase that you can see that just over time, 10 years from now, like, just money-wise, these programs will be much more. They won't just be Group of 5s that have been introduced into Power 5. They will be solidified Power 5 teams if they obviously spend their money right. But
yeah,
it's really interesting to see what's going to happen now that you're giving big-time money to smaller teams now. And that'll be the same with. It depends on what happens to the Pac-12. I mean, with spots opening up in the Pac-12, I mean, teams like San Diego State, Fresno State, Hawaii are like, ooh, maybe we'll join in there. If the Pac-12 doesn't dissolve, you'd have to be your Boise State, Fresno State, Hawaii, those SMU, some big teams, maybe even like Tulane or something would try and make a jump.
Yeah.
Memphis would try and make a jump to the Pac-12 while it's trying to grab anyone they can. So it's just really cool to see that hopefully things can adapt where it just shifts teams up in the end. That you see teams move up and become bigger programs. So.
Well, did you see the Pac-12 official statement that came out today? Did you read that?
I did not, no.
Yeah, so Kliavkoff thinks that they can trade up
Klikov, is that the?
Yeah. He said that they believe that they can trade up using G5s to replace Colorado. I don't know if you necessarily.
I don't know what he means by trade up. I mean, like Hawaii is cool, but they're not.
They're
like
not
Arizona
gonna,
or something.
They're not going to put the conference in a better position than they did with the 10 schools.
No. So that's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting because you could literally write a business class comparing the business decisions and idea set of the Pac-12 versus the Big 12.
Yeah.
You had one that was really aggressive and really picked up a lot of good assets and was really creative and aggressive in how they built their brand, whereas the Pac-12 is kind of holding on to a false hope.
Yeah. Well, a former brand that they did have.
Yeah.
I think they were kind of confident thinking, oh, we won't be the one to go down.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see the Pac-12 surviving and adding those G5 schools. Some of those that we've mentioned before, but I don't think that you're not making the conference better by.
It's just
adding
like a
them.
strike to their pride. I feel like they just got kind of like, obviously Colorado and Arizona or whoever's the second team. I mean, Colorado's not the best team at all in the Pac-12, but just the way it's happened, where it feels like they're just grabbing teams from the Pac-12. I don't know. It just feels like even if the Pac-12 stayed afloat, it would just be kind of like this rivalry between the Pac-12 and Big 12.
Yeah,
for a long
it's just
time.
gonna feel like this kind of empty conference, and those G5 schools that we mentioned are great programs. So when we're talking about the impact of Colorado leaving the Pac-12, it's a lot more significant than just losing the university itself, because Colorado, hasn't been great the last few years,
No, yeah.
but now you have to find another team. Finding two teams after the Big 12 took the last, the four best non-Power 5 teams. You're going to have...
There's a big drop-off from those teams.
Yeah, there's a big drop-off. And, finding two teams that fit the Pac-12 bill was difficult already.
Mm-hmm.
And then Colorado leaving and having to find a third one is really difficult. I think that's one of the biggest things that's making this realignment for the Pac-12 really difficult. Is not that they don't have to just find two teams now; they have to find three,
Probably
and I think,
four,
or possibly
Probably
4,
six?
5, 6. Yeah,
Well, the thing is that so what you're saying, it's not big shoes to fill. It's the fact that all of the cream of the crop were just taken. The top of the crop was just taken, and so now you're left with good programs like San Diego State and Fresno State and maybe some programs out east, Memphis, like we talked about. But the four that the Big 12 took were definitely much higher in terms of just a brand and also just success. We talk about Tulane. Tulane had one good year in the last 10 years. I love Tulane, but like
they're on the list.
They're on the list
Pac-12's list.
They're on the list because they had one good year.
Yeah.
Sadly, Tulane hadn't beat a ranked team like in 10 years up until last year. Yeah. So I mean, I love Tulane, but I would probably rather take some of those. I would take San Diego State first.
Yeah,
I think they're the best.
That's the easy
remaining
one, and they were probably that fifth team. If with the Big 12 expanding, they were that one that was in a lot of talks.
How likely is it that San Diego State is the other team with Colorado?
No way.
Okay.
No way. Because here's the thing: is going back to that media deal. If they add San Diego State, they have to renegotiate a lot of the parts of that media deal.
Why is that?
Because
they're not Power 5.
Because they're not Power 5,
like you said,
and so it's a lot easier transition with appeasing the media deal to add those Power 5.
That makes sense.
Teams.
That makes sense.
Like there is verbiage in there that they can expand, but I think the valuation will change if you add someone like SMU or San Diego State to the Big 12.
Yeah, and with all this stuff, it's just crazy because it feels like it's only been the Pac-12 versus the Big 12, and we still have not heard a peep from the ACC. Do you have some information on the ACC? Because I heard this morning there was a rumor. I think it's just in the wake of Colorado. Maybe people are freaking out. But Florida State, I heard rumors about Florida State, but they didn't seem very concrete. It seemed like the old stuff that was just like, oh, maybe Florida State.
The last 2 years with all the conference realignment going on, you have teams like Clemson, Florida State, and Miami that are all thinking about
huge brands that belong in a big Power 5.
Yeah.
That they would definitely belong in a SEC, Big 10, or Big 12.
Yeah.
So, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, but no, that was the only thing that
Okay.
I was gonna mention is like, oh, Florida State. There are some sources.
They've
saying
been the
that-
most forward about I've seen the most rumors about Florida State, meaning that I think they're the most likely, if there was any change to happen, it would be Florida State.
Yeah, and I mean Florida State's one of the probably the second biggest brand in the ACC right now behind Clemson, but they have they want to renew that rivalry with Florida and and playing.
I think they belong. I think Clemson and Florida State belong in the SEC. They're literally in the South, and they're like even though they're just as good sometimes. Clemson obviously won 2 national championships in the last in the playoff era. They just are still little brothers because they're in the ACC.
Yeah.
They're just still a step lower because they're not in the SEC. Same as Florida State. Even though Florida State keeps up well with Florida and they have a great rivalry, it still is just kind of like Florida leaves that game like, yeah, we're in the SEC though, so.
Yeah,
like it's just how it feels.
They have that title as an SEC school that they can be like, well, yeah, we're in the SEC though.
Like, oh, sorry, like we lost to Florida State this year, but like we also played one of the hardest schedules, so dang it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think Florida has the hardest schedule objectively of the entire year.
I believe so. Yeah,
it's developed into that.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm excited for Florida Utah.
I
want to go to that game.
I
It's
know.
gonna be so lit.
It's
an expensive game though, because Utah Stadium's not like that big, so it's
No.
hard to get tickets there. They're like starting at $300. So do
Yeah.
not use SeatGeek for that. You can if you want, but
Get $20 off.
get $20 off your $300 ticket to Florida Utah.
Yeah, I mean that's gonna be a hyped game because you have.
It's a Thursday night game. It's so weird.
I know.
I don't know why they scheduled such a primetime game for Thursday.
Well, it's that Labor Day weekend, and
I guess that's true.
They really try to pack in those high value and kind of spread them out.
That's why the Sunday game is happening.
That's why you have the
LSU.
Sunday game, and then you'll have I don't know who plays on the Monday. Who plays on Labor Day?
Oh, it usually is like Clemson. I think Clemson plays on Monday. It's always an ACC team. I know that.
Well, not in 2020 when BYU played Navy.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that Monday night game.
When we picked up that game last minute.
Yeah, that 2020 season was crazy because
That's weird.
we say that a lot. I skip over 2020 a lot of times, even though my team BYU had a really good season. I mean, it's hard when you're comparing that to like Colorado and they went like 4-2, and it's like so. Yeah, they had a winning record, but like not really.
Yeah.
So I don't really count 2020 that much. I mean, people. I'm not saying I'm right, but I don't really count 2020 that much. Even though BYU was great, and we scheduled Coastal Carolina 3 days in advance.
Yeah, that was just a weird season.
So yes, Clemson and Duke are playing on Monday, September 4th. So yeah, they're basically spreading out that entire weekend where you have decent games all weekend, starting with Utah, Florida, ending with Clemson, Duke, because that'll actually be a decent game because Duke's actually not bad.
Yeah,
so.
they had a good season last year, and we'll see. I don't expect them to match.
I don't think they would beat Clemson. I mean, that'd be sweet, but I don't think that would happen.
I'll probably cheer for them. Just I like cheering for.
I'd watch the game.
But
yeah, I'm excited. I'm also excited for Week 0 Navy Notre Dame.
Oh yeah,
that's in Dublin. It's the first time in history of the I don't know how long they've been playing these Ireland games. I think it's only been a few years, but it's the first time there's actually a decent matchup in Ireland. Because last year was Northwestern Nebraska.
Yeah, those are two of the
and the
worst
team that
teams.
went 1-11 won that game. So, I'm excited for Navy Notre Dame. I mean, Navy's like not the greatest, but they usually have a winning record. So I mean, having two teams that made a bowl last year would be cool.
Did you see that meme that people sent out? I don't remember who sent it out, but it showed teams that were undefeated. What was it? Undefeated?
I think you're talking about my post.
Oh, was it your post?
It was my post.
Oh, it was your post.
Yeah, it was my post.
Teams that went that only won over.
Yeah, this is one of my best posts I've done on the account so far.
I know.
This one right here. FBS teams that didn't win a game on U.S. soil in 2022. Just Northwestern. That's it.
But they won internationally.
Yeah, so they're the only team that won off of U.S. soil. I think. I don't think there's any other games off of U.S. soil, but.
Were there any other international games last year?
I don't think so. There will be with Big 12 Mexico, maybe, in the future. But I don't think there's any others.
Yeah, because the NFL always plays a few. You get the Mexico City, the Germany.
Germany, yeah. They'll do a few. But
one in the UK.
Ireland's the only one they really have done before. I'm sure they've done like a...
They have. Because I know like BYU played in Japan before.
What? Oh, way back in the 80s.
Yeah,
90s.
way back in the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's possible.
Yeah.
That is more. But yeah, I think right now Ireland's really the only one they do. And yeah, so Northwestern went 1-11 last year. And their only win was in Ireland, so and they're the only FBS team that no FBS teams went 0-11 last year.
Really?
Yeah, so one FCS team did, but FBS, there was no one who went 0-11. Even Colorado went 1-11, so, or 0-12. But
Yeah.
so Northwestern, it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we wanted to discuss? Anything else we want to talk about?
I mean, we never talked about my third team going in, but
Any other teams you have for the watch list?
so the other teams making a big move. I could see Washington. You know, Washington and Oregon are really, really kind of come in a pair. And so
I think so.
I think if Oregon comes, Washington comes to the Big 12, and you know if Oregon,
It'd be hard to separate those two.
it's pretty hard because that's a good rivalry, and they've really been together for a long time.
Well, it's the longest played game, I believe. It's the most head to head, the longest head to head matchup in history.
Oh,
Most
I didn't know
matchups, yeah.
Yeah, and so
Or is that Oregon State? I think it's Washington, Oregon though. Keep going.
Okay, but yeah, so I see Washington being that third team. I don't see ASU. ASU is kind of on the cusp, and I actually don't see Utah joining the Big 12 as much. So Utah is actually number one on my list for joining the Big 12.
Yeah, even as BYU fans, you're probably in the same boat as me. I don't see any cons to having Utah. I would love to play Utah every year.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Utah's beating our freaking butt all the time. I don't know why they're so hesitant. Like, I don't want to be joined in the truck stop conference with BYU. Like, what are you talking about?
Truck stop conference.
I don't care if you beat us. I'd rather just play you every year. I don't want to not play you.
Yeah. And here's I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast of how really the media, honestly, social media is a really big driving force in this conference realignment cycle, and there is a lot of bad blood between the Big 12 and Utah right now. You know, Utah,
not even BYU, just Big 12
just
and
Big
Utah.
12. Like, you go to any of those big Big 12 accounts, those popular Big 12 accounts, and you have a lot of disputes with some of the bigger Utah accounts. You have the Truck Stop Conference,
Truck Stop Conference,
Flyover Conference, and talking about how, you know, Big 12 doesn't have, you know, the big media markets.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you have the big media markets, freaking show up to games. No, I will say Utah shows up to their games. Utah is a passionate fan base, and they've got some really great.
One
fans.
of the hardest places to play.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think really Utah would really fit in well with the Big 12. I think
they would. I don't know. They would do great. I would love Utah to be in the Big 12.
But and with their. Did you see their AD's post back in March?
Oh yeah, the one that was like. I can't remember.
It was talking about how there's been a lot of talks with the Four Corner schools joining the Big 12, and
is it Give Me a Break? Is that what he said?
Yeah, Give Me a Break.
Yeah,
yeah.
I remember that.
Utah's AD came out and said retweeted it and said Give Me a Break, and today that tweet's come back.
That's the only thing from Utah that we even know about at all. That's the only information is that. And so the general impression, as there's been silence, it feels like Utah is kind of a little bit pushing back on the Big 12. They don't really want it. They're going to stay loyal to the Pac-12, at least for now.
Yeah.
Maybe with this weekend, maybe their opinions are changing. I don't know.
I really hope their opinion changes, because I really think that I would take Utah over pretty much. I mean, I should restate that. I would take, because here's the issue with Oregon and Washington. Oregon and Washington want to come to the Big 12 for the money, but the moment that the Big Ten or even the SEC come knocking, they're gone.
Yeah, they wouldn't be.
Gone.
Which I think is okay. I would love to have.
That's fine.
Oregon and Washington stop into the truck stop for 5 years and then leave. I mean, it'd be great for the conference.
Yeah.
That's what I talked about with Big 12 Mafia on our podcast. Is that how I don't think many people are opposed to. Okay, so what? Maybe they come for 5 years and then leave and the media deal's over. Great. Yeah. I don't have any problems with that.
I don't have an issue with that at all. But I see Utah, if they were to come, they would be more of a long term.
Yeah, same as Colorado. They would be all right, we're Big 12.
So I mean, honestly, from what I would love to see would be Utah, Oregon, Washington, which seems like it would be a good fit. But Utah is really, again, we're going back to the silence. They're not talking. They're not doing anything as far as we know, and that could really bite them in the butt.
From what I've actually seen, the last few days, I've had several. I mean, I'm friends with many Utah fans in real life, also on the page, and there's been quite a few that are like, "Man, I hope Utah joins the Big 12 now." And I'm like, I sure hope they do too. I've had 3 different Ute fans talk about it, how they're
Yeah.
like, dude, I really hope that we're the next ones to join. And I'm like, dude, same.
Yeah.
I would love to see you guys in the Big 12. I think you belong. And so, as a college football fan, aside from being a BYU football fan, being a college football fan, why would you ever want to split up a rivalry? You never want to do that.
Yeah.
You want to protect rivalries at all costs. That's what makes college football so cool. That's what makes it better than the NFL.
Yeah.
Is that rivalries? Obviously, there's like 2 rivalries in the NFL that are cool. There's like Packers, Bears, and stuff like that. But it's not like college football rivalry. It's just so much different.
It's different because you just have, college football. If you look back in the history, college football was the more popular. When football was coming out as a sport, college football was way more popular than than the NFL or AFL. The different professional leagues. College football has so much more tradition built into it.
Oh yeah.
And it's changing now, but originally college football was not really a money making strategy. It was all driven by tradition and these universities coming together and playing a game, and it wasn't about NIL money or sponsorship money or conference money or media money. It was all about playing the sport. And so if you go to any college football game, any university, it's going to be a different experience everywhere single time.
Different, yeah.
And that's what makes it so special. And that's one of the reasons why it's so sad to see the Pac-12 dying.
It's a whole different era. It's a West Coast football. It's way different.
Yeah, like you look back at, one of the greatest football traditions is the Rose Bowl, and that's no longer in the Pac-12.
Yep. It's
going to the Big Ten. With UCLA leaving, it's no longer Pac-12 stuff.
Mm-hmm. I think that they'll have to restructure. I think that obviously as of this year, the Rose Bowl would still be a bid from the Pac-12.
Yes.
But I think the Rose Bowl would now be in the playoff, and there wouldn't be Pac-12 teams in the playoff or in the Rose Bowl anymore, because you'd have with the 12-team playoff, the Rose Bowl would be in there every single year, and it wouldn't really matter who the teams are.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'd try to get them. If USC was in there or UCLA, I'm sure they'd try to make them play the Rose Bowl, but I'm not sure what they would do.
Yeah, it is kind of disappointing to see that's where it's really focused. The media, those big media companies are really pushing. That's where all the money is in college football these days, and that's why you're seeing the emergence of these super conferences and kind of a lot of what makes college football so unique and so great is kind of being swept by the wayside to basically in search of bigger media deals with the Big Ten and the SEC having these massive media deals worth millions of dollars that no one else can touch. And it's like, of course Oklahoma and Texas want to go to the SEC because they can make almost double the money. Mm-hmm. And so you're seeing a lot of those traditions, such as rivalries, get kind of pushed off to the side in lieu of bigger media deals.
Yeah. Yep. College football has so much potential to be amazing. So that's it for today's episode of Showtime CFB. So glad you guys listened. I was very glad to have my brother Tanner on here. Hopefully he'll be on here more often.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. All right. Well, signing off from Showtime College Football. See you next time.